Okay, this is the 80s, pretty much the presidency of Ronald Reagan. First, a little pop culture. One of the characteristics of movies in the 1980s centered on teens and their transition from children to adult. They were very serious, like The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. They were also pretty humorous, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was a movie based on a book, which was based on a short story by a writer for the Rolling Stones, who embedded himself into a Los Angeles high school to write a little, article for the Rolling Stone on what it was like to be a high school student in 1978, I think it was, 79. So anyhow, very popular article turned into a book turned into a movie. Movie was rated R. Now, there is, being high school, a lot of sex. There is a topless scene, Phoebe Cates. There's a masturbation scene, Judge Reinhold. She gets pregnant and has her brother, Judge Reinhold, take her to the abortion clinic. And she goes into the clinic, and the original script was for her to ask the question, which hurts more? Meaning, the pregnancy or ending the pregnancy. That's what the censor said. Absolutely not. So, they removed it and went from an X to an R. Regarding foreign policy, Vietnam movies were all the rage. Movies about beating the Russians were all the rage. In the case of Vietnam, like Chuck Norris and Sylvester Stallone, now we win Vietnam. Ditto with the comedies like Bill Murray's Stripes. Goes up against the Ruskies and beats them. That had been our concern since 1945, since the end of World War II. NSC 68 says this war is going to happen. We prepared for it. We're ready for it. And the public is being told, here they come, here they come, here they come. Very anxious time, very nervous time. And we had all those proxy contests, We didn't actually directly go up against the Soviet Union, but we supported one side, they supported another side. Sometimes they sent troops, sometimes we sent troops. British music, the second British invasion, 1980s. Had a new TV station called MTV, and they actually played music. That's what the M stands for in MTV. Michael Jackson actually had to sue MTV to get on it because MTV said it was rock and roll, and Michael Jackson was not rock and roll. Well, he's going to win the court case, and that's going to bring a tremendous amount of money to MTV. Not just opening the door to Michael Jackson, but to a tremendous amount of African American singers and groups. We have personal computers. Yes, if you want to argue, Apple's Mac did come out in the late 70s. The first publicly popular PC was the Commodore 64. This was my first computer, Commodore 64. You know why it was called 64? I have a jump drive that says 64 on it. I wonder what the connection is. Video games. Space Invaders, dum, 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 dum. They just went back and forth, and you went back and forth and shoot them. Donkey Kong. Mario was not named at this time. Just the villain. Pac-Man. Space Invaders. Not Space Invaders. This is Space Invaders. Asteroid. You basically run around here shooting what appears to be asteroids. What a video game console looked like. Atari. Domestic issues. First, politics. had some problems. It's called the trickle-down theory. We had some bad economic issues in the 1980s, and Ronald Reagan is going to embrace what Herbert Hoover embraced with what American presidents embraced in the 19th century. It did not work in the 19th century. It did not work during the Depression. It does not work in the 80s. It's called trickle-down. Government is not going to give money or resources or assistance to you. They're going to give money, resources, and assistance to major corporations, to Boeing, to DuPont, to IBM, to Halliburton, and then they will use that money to modernize or to hire you, and then you'll get a job and you'll be able to buy stuff and the economy will be great. It did not work in the 80s. It did not work during the Depression. It did not work in the 19th century. That's the trickle-down theory. There's going to be an assassination attempt by a guy named Hinckley. Hinckley attempts to assassinate President Reagan because Hinckley loves Jodie Foster, the actress, and he's trying to get her attention. AIDS becomes well-known, popularly known in the 1980s, with the death of some pretty big people. Freddie Mercury from Queen, Rock Hudson. Ba-dum-ba-dum-bum-bum. Here's a story of a man named Brady. She has her father's eyes and her mother's AIDS. Yep. Shuttle program, technically launched in 1979. The idea of the shuttle program was to promote mass transportation into space and around the world. The shuttle was supposed to be something that happened, that took off all the time, that landed all over the place. It was going to be quick routes between the U.S. and Asia, or the U.S. and Europe. Did not end up that way. And one reason, because NASA kept pushing for quicker and quicker and quicker relaunches. And then we had the Challenger incident. And then we had Columbia. International. Oops. Come on. Here we go. 1980, the United States hosted the Winter Olympics. The number one ranked hockey team in the world was the Soviet hockey team. They've been playing together for years and years and years. They were professional hockey players. So they were technically amateurs, but they were professionals. They even came here and beat the New York Rangers. Then they played NHL All-Stars and beat them. They were the clear favorite to win it all, the gold medal in Lake Placid, New York in 1980. I was not a hockey fan. I am not a hockey fan. I've only seen one hockey game my entire life, and that was when the United States played the Soviet Union. This was the Cold War realized. This was that opportunity to fight against the godless communists, to defeat them once and for all, in face-to-face, hand-to-hand, mano-a-mano. In fact, the Soviet team had a practice game against the U.S. team and just shellacked them before the Olympics began. So, no reason to even fantasize that the U.S. could compete, let alone win in this game. Well, much to the shock of me and my two brothers and my parents and Americans all over the place, with about a minute and a half left to go, the U.S. is leading 4-3. That was not even for a medal. U.S. won, so they'll go on to play for a medal round. In fact, they'll play and they'll win the gold medal, first time since 1960. Didn't watch it. Didn't watch the medal round. Didn't watch them winning the gold medal. My brothers didn't. My parents didn't. This was the highlight of the Cold War. God damn, that was exciting to finally beat the Soviet Union, have them face to face, and defeat them. Absolutely unbelievable. Amazing event. And the Cold War will last a good 10 more years. The Soviet nuclear facility exploded, Chernobyl. Thousands and thousands will be killed, not just immediately, but in the long term with the radiation. And of course, the Soviets denied it. 1979, there was a civil war in Afghanistan. 1980, the Soviet Union invades. So, because this is the Cold War, we create what we called the freedom fighters, the Mujahideen. We teach these guys how to use all sorts of bombs, how to make roadside bombs, how to use rocket-propelled grenades, shoulder-to-air missiles, how to ambush. We teach them how to fight and win a guerrilla warfare. Well, Saudi Arabia had some problems. There was a small but growing number of Saudis who were unhappy with the Saudi government, believing that they were not conservative enough. So what the U.S. did is we go to these ill-affected people in Saudi Arabia and we said, you want to fight really someone who's against Islam? That's the Soviet Union. And so we're going to take you to Pakistan and we're going to teach you all sorts of things about guerrilla warfare, about how to build bombs, about how to blow stuff up, everything that you need to know about fighting a guerrilla war. And then we're going to ship you into Afghanistan. You'll be part of the Mujahideen. Anybody here look familiar? Yes. Yep. Yep. Well, at the same time, there's a civil war in Lebanon. Little tiny Lebanon. Christians versus Muslims. So we enter the civil war on the side of the Christians. Now, we're of course non-combat, because remember the War Powers Act said if the president sends military members into combat, he must alert the Congress. Well, Reagan says these are non-combat troops. This is the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, in Beirut. This is it in April 1983 when a suicide bomb kills 70 Americans. In October of 1983, the U.S. Marine Barracks is attacked by a truck bomb, killing 241 American Marines. Reagan says we're not going to pull out. That would bring dishonor to those who died. And 10 weeks later, in December, right before Christmas, under the cover of darkness, he pulls the U.S. troops out of Lebanon. At the same time, we have a revolution in Nicaragua. Now, we used to support the brutal dictator, Somoza. We supported him and his family since before World War I. Well, there's a group of communists called the Sandinistas, the followers of a guy named Sandino. And so we create another group of freedom fighters called the Counter-Revolutionaries, or the Contras. And we arm them, we supply them. Look what he's wearing, a John Deere hat. What do you know? U.S., look at that. Well, the Contras were not nice guys. They were terrorists, they were rapists, they were arsonists, they were murderers, they smuggled drugs, they smuggled guns. And Congress hears these reports, so they investigate and they say, that's it. They passed the Boland Amendment. The Boland Amendment said, no more secret funding for the Contras. If you, the White House, if you want to fund the Contras, if you want us, Congress, to give them money, it needs to be open. You can tell us exactly what's going on. No, this is not me. Every once in a while, someone asks, is this me? This is a big fat guy. That is not me. And he needs a little color, a little time in the sun, and he needs a shave. Well, at the same time in Lebanon, we have a new terrorist group called Hezbollah. Hezbollah is Arabic for Party of God. Hezbollah, Party of God. And Hezbollah is being armed and supplied and supported by Iran. Well, one of the things that Hezbollah was doing to make money was capturing Westerners and holding them for ransom. They did that with the English all the time, and so they started to do that with Americans. Well, Ronald Reagan says, we don't negotiate with terrorists, so we're not going to do anything to help the American hostages. Well, once again, Iran is supporting Hezbollah. So I wonder if we give Iran something they might need, if they would put pressure on Hezbollah in Lebanon to release the American hostages. Enter Oliver North, an officer in the Pentagon. And here's what we do. Oliver North will claim that he was instructed to do this. The White House will say he did this on his own. When Ronald Reagan is asked, his response is, quote, I don't remember. Now, of course, if that was on Judge Judy would say, well, I don't remember means you may have done it. But this is not Judge Judy court. So, we're going to smuggle arms for hostages. Here's why. We lose Iran, right? Islamic militants take over. Iran goes from being led by a dictator pro-U.S. to a religious dictator anti-U.S. So we needed someone to counterbalance that, and we go to Iraq. The Shah is out. The Ayatollah is in. And we turn to a rising star in Iraq, a guy named Saddam Hussein. I like the suit. I have a white suit. Only wear it in the summer. Don't wear black ties. A little more colorful than that. So, Saddam Hussein slowly rises to power, primarily through assassinating those above him. The guy on the right is the president, who suddenly retires, and Saddam Hussein takes over. He's in charge of the government, and he's in charge of the military. So, there is an 8-year war between Iran and Iraq. We are arming the Iraqis. We are giving them intelligence. We are giving them chemical weapons. We are giving them biologic weapons. Over 1 million people will be killed in the 8-year war between Iran and Iraq. Well, Iran had the 4th largest military in the world. We built that up. So when the Islamic leaders take over, all they have are U.S. weapons and U.S. tanks and U.S. aircraft, and meaning they need U.S. parts. And so, here's what we do. We are going to take weapons, parts, stuff that Iran used. We're going to sell it to the Israelis, who will then sell it to the Iranians, who will then put pressure on Hezbollah to release the U.S. hostages. And then, since this is under the table, we're going to take the money that we made off the sale and funnel it secretively to the Contras. And that's going to get Oliver North in a little trouble. Well, Kurds, the largest nationless people in the world. As you can see here, they're in like 4 different countries. Well, the Kurds were in a particularly interesting or problematic position. Saddam Hussein said, well, I know you guys are Kurds, but you're Iraqi, so fight with us during the war. Iran says, well, I know you guys are kind of Iraqi culturally, but religiously you're with us, so you should fight with us. So when they fought with the Iranians, the Iraqis attacked them. When they fought with the Iraqis, Iran attacked them. So they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. Well, after the 8-year war is over with, Saddam Hussein takes the chemical weapons that he got from the United States, and he attacks the Kurds, known as the Anfal campaign. About 5,000 will be killed with chemical weapons. And what do? Do we demand sanctions? Do we do airstrikes? Do we try to take him out of power? No, absolutely not. In fact, we send U.S. diplomats to let Saddam Hussein know that we still support him. Specifically, a guy named Donald Rumsfeld, who will play a major role in the presidency of George W. Bush. 1988 is a presidential election year. Ronald Reagan finished his 2 terms, and so we have George H.W. Bush. Relatively easy to win against the Democrat. Bush, probably on paper, was the most prepared person who ever became U.S. president, at least at that time. World War II veteran, decorated World War II veteran, UN ambassador to the United Nations, head of the CIA, vice president for 8 years, had a lot of experience. And he wins. Oh, the exercise craze hit in the 1980s. Why is that? Because the baby boomers finally realized that they're going to die. And so they turned to exercise to hold off the inevitable knock on the door from the Grim Reaper.